can't get with it, Mr. Ugly Man. Shaba. I don't know if you remember Shaba Ranks. Man was ugly. You are now watching J.U.K Sports Show. I am the host, King Ralph, here with my homie and the co-host, the homie Kai. What's poppin', bro?
Yo. I'm glad to be back. You know what I'm saying? We're getting closer and closer off the football season. So, yeah, it's almost time. The number one sport in America, not named basketball, but all right.
It's a good time because sports are starting to ramp up. Summertime is dry.
Real dry.
Shout out to Major League Baseball and WNBA and the Big Three for holding it down. Because when we get to like College World Series, Softball World Series, and like Little League World Series, I'm sorry, I played baseball, but man, and golf and tennis, sports is dry. It's a summer.
Hey, that's when the game console turns on.
Oh God, streaming heavy.
Yep.
But this show is brought to you by Fitboxer. If you want to do any podcasts like what you're watching, photo shoots, music videos, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707 Fitboxer. Make sure you go ahead and follow those socials too. My handle you see in my name at KYNGRALPH is for TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, add an underscore for Twitter. We got FIBA World Championships coming back up. In games, in season tournament for the NBA was just announced. So go on Instagram, go in that search bar at v.houseofhoops for unbiased breakdowns and analysis. Kai's gonna get you right.
Yes, sir.
So we're continuing our series. They've already announced who the players of the who the top players are. They finished the list already, but we're making our way through it, giving our thoughts and opinions on it. So at 60, we got Trayvon Diggs. 59, we got Justin Simmons. 58, we got Jeffrey Simmons from the Titans. At 57, we got Jordan Poyer.
Okay.
55, we got Dak Prescott. His boy Tony Pollard at 54. 53, we got Brian Burns. 52, we got Mike Evans. 51, we got Jonathan Allen. And at 50, we got Aaron Rodgers. Give me your thoughts.
So first and foremost, I believe that Aaron Rodgers is of two tiers of a player, quarterback, than Dak Prescott is. Always has. Oh, but so sorry, that was noise in the background. I'm like, is there ghosts? Anyway, we got ghosts here, everyone. But I believe that he's a two-time tier player than Dak Prescott is, and I believe that Aaron Rodgers should actually be the gap should be a little bit higher. You're talking about someone who was a two-time league MVP in back-to-back seasons prior to this last season, and he was relatively healthy. So I think that if you have someone who was injured once again and also led the NFL in picks after missing five games, I think him being at 56 or so, that's a little too rich for me. Also, I'm looking at a guy like Jordan Poyer, someone who, while yes, suffering injury, but he's still what many would consider a top 5 safety at his position, right? So I think if you're top at your position and you have a guy like a Trayvon Diggs who may be within the top 10 of his position, wherever you're going to rank them, I actually like some of those defensive-minded players to be a little bit higher off, in just my personal opinion. But that's all I got on it. That's all I got on it.
Me personally, I don't really think outside of Dak, I don't really see I have a problem with anybody because if you think about it, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, would you say he's a top 3 quarterback?
Nope, not right now.
So where he's at is probably 5th or 6th best quarterback in the NFL. So him being in at 50 is where I don't really have a problem with it. Like Jordan Poyer, you said he's top 5, but he's in the 50 realm. Trayvon Diggs, you can probably mention Jalen Ramsey, Sauce. I probably would go even Tariq Woolen, honestly. Terrell, Patrick Surtain, So you could probably get about 6, possibly 7.
Xavier Howard.
Right, Xavier Howard, like you could
And,
possibly get to 7 when it
Okay.
comes to thinking of corners better than him. So him being in at 60, it's
Mm.
not really like that. It's not that crazy to me. So like for me, I think this part, the only person I got the problem with is Dak and maybe Tony Pollard.
Oh, what was Tony Pollard?
Right underneath Dak at 54.
Yeah. Okay. I like Pollard though. I like Pollard.
And so like it's one of those things where it goes back to where we were talking about a couple weeks ago when Tar was on. Is like why are we going back to back players for the same team? And this makes the list a little fishy.
Agreed.
And so next up at the 49 slot, at the 49 slot, we got where's my man? 50 slot. We got Cam Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Where we at? There we go. Cam Jordan at 50. 49, we got Patrick Surtain, like I mentioned. We got Hassan Reddick at 48. Cooper Kupp at 47. 46, we got C.J. Mosley.
Wow.
Cameron Hayward at 45. Jalen Waddle at 44. Demario Davis at 43. Kirk Cousins at 42. And Lane Johnson at 41.
Okay. So when I look at that list, C.J. Mosley, former Raven, no hard feelings about him being on the Jet, switching to the Jets and the other teams and all that kind of stuff. When he did that, I remember that move, but years ago. But he would be someone that I would actually move out of that particular tier, just that range. I would probably put him in the range that we just talked about,
right?
Maybe even a little bit further, just because due to the players in that range. But I don't really have any problems with some of the other rankings. We talked about prior to the show about Kirk Cousins. We feeling about that being more consistency, production based rating. Because Kirk Cousins, one thing that you cannot knock is his production in terms of constantly producing numbers, volume stats for people who are into the volume stats. And also he built a rapport with a young receiver in Justin Jefferson. And instantaneously, they became a dynamic duo in the league, one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in the league in terms of, you talk about Justin Jefferson, a type of 2,000-yard type receiver, and arguably the best receiver in the game, depending on what you value. There's so many different styles. Like Ocho Cinco said to Cam Newton, I don't know if you guys saw that episode. He was on Cam Newton's podcast and they asked him, who's your top 5? He's like, oh, man, depends on what you like, So, yeah. Other than that, I'm cool with it, man. What are your personal thoughts on it, man?
Yeah, I think when you start to have this conversation, it's like, all right, like that's why that conversation as far as the criteria is so important, because, and I hate to harp on it again for the third week in a row, but that's Cooper Kupp missed a lot of last season, and he's in the top 45. And so it kind of makes it to where, like, you have someone who played majority of the season, if not all season, had 158 tackles, made his 5th all-pro team, 5th Pro Bowl, and you have him 2 spots in front of Cooper Kupp, who – oh, wait, no. Actually, you got him in the same realm, not the same spot, but the same realm as someone who had 7 – he didn't even cross a full 1,000-yard season.
Right.
And so it kind of makes it to where, like, what really is the criteria here? And it's like we start to have that conversation of, all right, is it just last season or is it this year going into next year? Because I wouldn't say he had a crazy injury where I would think he would have a down year as far as playing a full season and then not having the stats to match. And I think a lot of him only having 812 yards is more of an indictment of his injuries that he had than it is as the player that he was last year. And that's pretty much where I only problem I have. I think Demario Davis like I said, super consistent. You're gonna see him up there every year. I was actually really surprised at CJ Mosley quietly. That's
Made
who
it.
I'm comparing him to. He's made 5 All-Pro teams.
Yeah,
Five
that's impressive. That's highly impressive. Like most people don't do that in their career.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
What he's been able to do is like it's
yeah.
crazy. I think Cam Hayward,
Mhm.
Cam Jordan, I think they're all in the right spot. Jalen Waddle, he's going to start to creep up over the next couple of years. I think he's going to slowly start moving up this list.
Mhm.
And I'm curious to see. Every year we had this conversation, and it's like I don't care what Kirk Cousins does. Let me know when the playoffs start and what team they playing, and then I'll be watching.
And primetime Monday football games too. He seems to. I
Yeah,
don't know,
we'll be out there buns.
that's easy money, man.
And so, our generation
Yes.
of hoopers is starting to get inducted to the hall. So we got Dirk, Powell, Tony Parker, Dwayne Wade. Shout out to Becky Hammond to name a few names. Sorry if I didn't mention you. But how will this Hall of Fame class be remembered to you?
All right, so this Hall of Fame class will be remembered to me as a class that kind of defined an era. You know what I'm saying? When we talk about 2000s basketball, I believe that the one that did the best would probably be, say, you know, the one with Duncan and KG. But this is another part. You can look at the later half of 2000s basketball. Excuse me, Tony Parker being a 2007 Finals MVP, being one of the best international players in the history of basketball. As a matter of fact, to further answer your question, this is going to be kind of remind me of how the league was able to expand to the international game, and these players put faith into GMs, into coaches, into believing and building their teams with those type of stars and around those type of stars. You look at a Pau Gasol, right? You look at one of the prominent big men and power forwards in the league, who eventually went to the Bulls, played center for you guys, and developed a three-point shot later on in his career.
Right.
You look at Dirk Nowitzki. I believe he came in when he was what? I want to say 18 years old, 19 years old from Germany, right? Played underneath the legendary coach Don Nelson, then played under Rick Carlisle. Mark Cuban orchestrated that whole thing, the pairing with him and Steve Nash, right? So I think the international game is a beautiful game. The EuroLeague game is a beautiful game. And Dirk, I believe that his legacy, Ralph, I'm going to kind of focus in on Dirk. His legacy changed. Dirk was never a player that was not skilled, right? But he was never considered in the realm of a Tim Duncan, a Kevin Garnett, right? Karl Malone at the time. When people talk about who's the top 5 power forwards of all time, right? People forget Malone for off the court stuff, which we're not going to get into on this show. But you know what I'm saying? But I think Dirk just beating the Heatles team, the not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. How much time I got now? But so yeah. So just him going through that road to prosperity, as Stephen A would say, was impressive. And then last but not least, I look at last but not least, I'm going to look at both Becky Hammond, her success as a player and a coach, right? Winning a championship with the Aces, Greg Popovich, as well. I think he's third all time, and I want to say he's third all time in something. I forgot, but I know he's number 1 in wins, but he's third all time in like 170 and something. I forgot. I'll look up the stat and find it. But you just have a lot of winners. So I think this Hall of Fame class also defines winners, Ralph. I want to say we have, 8 chips between them, 4 with Parker, 3 with Wade, and 1 with Dirk.
Right.
So a class of winners, a class of international superstars, and some coaching. So I'm going to let you take up the rest, man. Go ahead.
And I think that everything that you said is like, yeah, that they're a class of winners. I think that they'll be remembered for their impact and shaping the game the way that it is now. They are the bridge between the 90s to where we are today. And it's like, as much as Jeff Teague want to sit there and say, oh, nobody's playing like Dwayne Wade, Donovan Mitchell is a direct effect of what you get from a Dwayne Wade. Terry Rozier was someone that was compared to Dwayne Wade coming out of college. So it's you have that Euro step where he created his own version of that Euro step where instead of taking the ball across your body, he would go over the top of your head as he's stepping past you, which is something that is just different. A lot of people weren't going to the rim and playing like that. Dirk with the fadeaway shot, which I think is funny because Jerry Stackhouse tried to say that he's a person that had the effect on Dirk to create that fadeaway shot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you watch the podcast with shout out to No Chill Gill, he says that when he left the Wizards to go play for the Mavericks, Rick Carlisle helped him with his fadeaway, which eventually his fadeaway and creating space is what helped Dirk create the space with the leg kick. And so, but to go all the way back to history, Larry Bird gave his sauce to Rick. Rick gave his sauce to Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry gave his sauce to Dirk, and now we got the Dirk fadeaway.
Legendary. One-legged too.
But then Pau Gasol as well. Just being a Swiss Army knife, being able to a versatile big. He ushered in. He was part of that era that ushered in pretty much Jokic to a certain degree. Jokic has kind of taken. He's a much better ball handler, but the ability to shoot the three, post moves, left hand, right hand, mid range jumper, ability to see the floor because Powell in his prime is 20-10 with 6 assists, 5 or 6 assists with 2 blocks. You get Tony Parker, who was just a blur on the floor when he first got in, ushered in that international French flavor that leads us to having someone like a Wembanyama.
Yeah.
And so everyone that I've named, and then even Becky Hammond, what she's doing it for the Aces right now, coming in, winning the title right away, and then also being able to lead them back to where their favorite to win, and her historic WNBA career. So I think this Hall of Fame class for the sport is gonna be remembered as for the impact on the game and the culture going forward.
I agree. Absolutely.
And so Jordan Schultz, who I actually found out his dad was the person that started Starbucks.
What?
And his dad was his dad owned the Supersonics. And so during his time when his dad was owning the Supersonics, he played college basketball and started watching the way that players were being treated in the media, which is why he got into sports journalism. He started off with as a basketball insider. Now he's an NFL insider. He has some bold stuff to say. He has a lot of confidence in players, and I'm like, I don't know about that, but I did agree with this particular one. So he came out. He said that given the work that Jay Fields has put in, the upgrade in talent, he believes Justin Fields should be able to have over 3,800 yards total as far as passing and rushing, over 27 touchdowns total between running and passing, as well as the Bears being able to win at least nine games this season. Are these realistic goals for the Bears and Justin Fields?
I think if that's something that's they're trying to reach for and realistic and obtainable, I do believe it's obtainable. And the reason why I believe that it's obtainable, Ralph, is because I look at what Justin Fields was doing when he was pretty much bereft of talent in terms of upfront protection with the offensive line. Therefore, when you have a rushed offensive line or you're having to make rushed decisions, right, you can't really sit back and just always go through your progressions and take deep shots down the football field, right? I think they've improved the offensive line. I look at his rushing floor, right? And his rushing floor, he's going to give you about 10 touchdowns on the ground alone, okay? So, and no one really can catch him like the way he plays the game of football. I also look at the fact that they've continue to provide him with the resources around the quarterback and building the quarterback up by giving him requisite weapons. A true number one receiver in DJ Moore. DJ Moore's specialty is getting yards after the catch, and we got a chance to see a glimpse of that with in the preseason week 1 game, right? And just him being able to catch a short pass, a short screen, and take it to the house. Now, a lot of those passes were by the line of scrimmage and all that kind of stuff, but you can accumulate yards by that way, right? Just dump it off, give it to the guy,
Right.
Then you have Cole Kmet. You have a big wide receiver, a 6'4" wide receiver, and Chase Claypool, who has a large catch radius. So having those weapons around Justin Fields matched with his rushing floor, I think that it's just going to come down to the small changes. I heard their GM said they want to see him improve. He didn't even set expectations. Like, what about expectations? I just want to see him improve. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's saying anything bad. He's just like, I want to see him take that leap. Look at what Josh Allen did in year 3. Look at what Jalen Hurts did, right? And Jalen Hurts wasn't known for someone who had like this great big arm. We saw in the Super Bowl in that one play, right? But he was able to make the right decisions with the weapons. And then last but not least, I think just improving the 2-minute drill offense was something that the GM I actually heard. I did some research on that. He said he wants to improve in the 2-minute drill offense. Well, if the defense has anything to say with it, they might be playing from behind some games, right? And so, but that also benefits what your boy Jordan Schultz was saying. He's going to be able to accumulate stats, statistical profile if he has to play from behind in some games, win some games. And comeback wins also translate to MVP.
Right.
Possibly. You can get some comeback wins. So I think that best case scenario, those things could definitely happen.
I personally think these are realistic goals, man. I think that 3,800 yards is like when you think about last year, he had 1,100 yards and 2,200 yards passing, 1,100 yards on the ground, 22 by air. And so when you start to look at that, it's like, all right, when you look at Khalil Herbert, DJ Moore, Darryl Mooney, Claypool, Cole Kmet, big 6'7" tight end to throw the rock to. Like, at some point, given the upgrade in the offensive line, he should be able to get more yardage through the air at least. And so I think that's one, can he have the time? 2, can he dissect the defense? I think with his intelligence, watching him play the way he played at Ohio State, given that it's college, he's shown that he can be a throw-first quarterback.
Okay.
Because we didn't even know he ran like this.
Oh, no. In college.
It wasn't to the degree that like C.J. Stroud, how C.J. Stroud just never ran. But he wasn't like, we weren't comparing him to Jalen Hurts or Lamar until he got to the NFL. Then it's like, oh wow, he could actually run 4,000 yards. And so I think what he's been able to do as far as the team, what the team's been able to do, getting an upgrade in talent, I think it's one of those darned if you do, darned if you don't type of situations, because it's like, all right, so they say he sucks. Then you get some players that, but then the pushback on that is get him some talent. Well, all right, we'll see how he plays when he gets some talent. Then you get some talent. Now it's, he didn't even throw the ball past the line of scrimmage. It's like, yo, which one am I getting? Like, at some point, regardless of what you want to say, you look at any championship team, regardless of the sport, you gotta have players. It's not just 1 or 2. And the dynasties have 3 to 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on them. And so you gotta have someone, regardless of what you think or what you say, you can sit back and even look at Tom Brady and go through every team. It was never just Tom Brady on that offense. Now, regardless how you feel about it, he might have taken people that you probably wouldn't have said they were individually great players, but they had an individual output that was immaculate. So give Justin Fields some help. You have a 6'4" Claypool, like you said. You got DJ Moore, who's always going to go for 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns every year. You got Mooney, who prior to Justin Fields getting there was a 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, he got some hands too, low key.
And then they got Bijan Robinson's backup from Texas, who given a smaller sample size, we talked about it during our draft analysis.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it then, who has just as high of a missed tackle rate on him as Bijan Robinson. And I think his name is Rashawn. I know his first name is Rashawn. And I think that he's going to eventually be
He's elusive. Yeah.
He's going to run the ball. Like, he's a bruiser, too. He's a big back.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a bigger back than he's a little bigger than Bijan Robinson.
A little bigger than him.
So he's the perfect complement to a Khalil Herbert, who is smaller in stature, receiving more of a receiving back, where Rashawn can come in and be that bruiser, short yardage. And I think eventually I think he has the talent to be an every down back.
Okay.
Which will give them some versatility when it comes to you be able to put a Herbert out and have him play like a receiver, like an Alvin Kamara in a slot type of situation. And so I think the 9 wins is the one that's going to be the most challenging, because you're going to have to go back and look at their schedule. Right. And then when you're looking at their schedule, you start to have – they start off the season with – they got the Packers, Bucks, Chiefs, Broncos in week 4.
They could go 2-2 possibly.
And then they got the Commanders at week 5 and then Vikings in 6. So it's like, all right, I could see them going
500. Well,
I can see there's a possibility of them being 4-2.
Yeah.
Because I think the Commanders are a winnable game. I think the Broncos are a winnable game. Bucks are a winnable game, and the Packers are a winnable game. Now, everybody would assume Vikings, Chiefs, losses. But with the Vikings being in your division, you play them every year. That game's always going to be tougher than it would be for anybody else. And so, at that point, you got 4. If they can go 4-2, then you got my Raiders in week 7. LA Chargers in week 8, Saints in week 9, Panthers in week 10. So I just read off another where you can get to 6-4 by week 10. And that's the part for me where I'm like, I just don't see it being, it's not a crazy ask, but
it's not a shoe-in either.
Yeah, exactly.
Understandable. Yeah, if they're playing 500 before I don't know when they have a bye. If they play 500 football with a young quarterback, but you want to see if you can, you want to have play winning football pretty much.
They don't have a bye week until week 13.
Man. Yeah. It could all go downhill after that. So
exactly. And then so we watched the Untold Johnny Manziel documentary on Netflix.
I need the money, like Aloe Black said. I need $1.
It's an interesting watch, but the most important thing, or the one that stuck out a lot, even went viral to a certain degree, is his comparison to Reggie Bush, given that he admitted to wrongdoings, and Reggie Bush has since been exonerated of the things that he was accused of. He came out and said. Johnny Manziel made a statement on Twitter. I don't have the full quote, but to keep it short and sweet and simple, is the difference between my story and Reggie's story is that my illegal activities, emphasis on the air quotes, did not start until I had already won the Heisman. He did go on, and he stated previously in that statement that Reggie should have his trophies back. He should be allowed to come to events where Hall of Fame players get together, and that he disagrees with the stance of taking everything from him. But do you agree with him that there's a difference between the two situations?
Based off of the way that he put it, I do agree that there is a difference in terms of the two situations. Strictly, excuse me, because he already produced on the field. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's talking strictly production based and what he accomplished to up to that point, which afforded him the Heisman. And then once he got the Heisman, then he had the real notoriety and the people on him. And hey, look, I'm getting money. I'm doing this, the signing, like the autographs. I'm doing autograph signing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, hey, I'm getting paid for this. Which, by the way, I mean that was actually a pretty dope thing. Like,
right,
you're that young, you know what I'm saying? Like 19, 18 years old, et cetera, 19, whatever. And you're meeting Drake, you're meeting Rick Ross, you're meeting Snoop Dogg, you're traveling around the nation pretty much, and everyone knows your name. But yeah, I do agree. Just for the sake of the Reggie Bush situation, it's like, yeah, I actually wound up producing on the football field. So what are you going to do about it? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not my fault that you decided this now. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but I still believe that. And another thing I'm going to say is I still believe that Reggie Bush deserves to have his Heisman back.
Facts.
And I think we talked about that in another episode, and that's where I'm going to segue to you. But he deserves his Heisman back regardless of what Johnny did. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think. I think I agree with it. I think that when you frame it the way that he framed it, because of when you look at most situations, they strip them of awards and wins and things of that nature when things occur in the season in which it happened.
Right.
And so it's like, all right, at the point where you lost availability or eligibility, when you lost eligibility, that's when they kind of go back and look at things. If I could be wrong, it could be one of those things where the whole, like, now that if you're ineligible in this season, you just are ineligible, period. But because I haven't really followed it that closely to know that, but it's just I can see it being a difference. I think that regardless of the matter, it doesn't really matter at this point. We got NIL deals. At that point, who cares? It's kind of water under the bridge at this point. And I see the situation why it's going to be a sticky spot because of the racial dynamic to it as well. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think at this point, are we going to start going back and if we found out someone made money?
Right.
Like, we're going to start going back and taking awards or wins and things of that matter. And that's the part for me that I don't want to get to that point.
Hey, and another thing I was going to say, Ralph, which this could be a whole nother topic in its own. It could have been a whole nother topic, for the show. I didn't think about it, but like the NIL deals. Think about Johnny Manziel and before the NIL deals and why he talked about how I really hate the NCAA. Yeah. And we saw the dude come up and he was adamant of, the players are just players, It was like that. It was like that. Dare I say, plantation mentality? Like, it's like, they're gonna work, they're gonna generate revenue for you. Look how much players like Manziel, look how much players like Tebow or Cam generated for a school, or even schools like that never really won anything. Texas A&M, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then now we look at Angel Reese and finally getting to bear the fruits of the NIL deals, and it's just really cool to finally see players being able to accomplish that. So that was actually a little key nugget, people. If you watch the doc, we might have spoiled it already, but that you should definitely look into. So that's all I got, man.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting topic and an interesting conversation because, like, even Jerry Stackhouse on the No Chill Gill podcast, he's a coach at Vanderbilt, and so he was talking about knowing how much money that you as a basketball program or whatever your program is. And then it's like they're going to take that $50 million that you bring in and disperse it to other parts of the program, other parts of the school. And it's like, hold up, wait a minute. So it's like, I got these kids out here that not getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like they bring in $50 million. They struggling students. And you got us pretty much funding other programs. And it's like, I don't really think that that's fair or our fault.
Right.
And that's the part where I think it's an interesting conversation. And I really don't want it to get to a point where we start going back looking at other stuff, because now it's just like at this point, it'll just be water under a bridge.
Opening the Pandora's box for no reason.
Exactly. And so we got college football just released on Monday, their AP preseason top 25. Did they get it right?
I was gonna try to do a college football theme song. And I was like, I don't know if they have a college football theme song yet, but
It's like the college game
day.
I couldn't tell you the song.
Okay. Well, I'll do the lead chorus. So not so fast. No, but anyway,
right.
We needed mascot heads. But I actually put some things down, and I think the one thing that kind of caught my eye when you talk about did they get it right was your Ohio State, right? And then you have Michigan and the rankings of it, because Michigan was higher than Ohio State because you guys were 3. Michigan was at number 2. We understand the whole fiasco going on with with Harbaugh and vice versa. But I'm looking at Michigan. I'm like, okay, you return Blake Corum, you have Cornelius Johnson. They have a manageable schedule as well. And recently, John Harbaugh has the 2-game win streak over Ryan Day after Ohio State University had won 8 straight repeat. 8, lucky number, 8 ball, 8 straight games versus Michigan, which was the second longest, if I'm not mistaken, active streak in the nation. And I think I actually predicted that one. I'm not going to lie. I think I predicted that one on one of our episodes, that they would finally break through, Ralph. And I know you are cool. But so I think what we're doing, we have the recency bias with Michigan, but not because Michigan on paper doesn't look good, not because Michigan, I'm not saying Michigan doesn't have the talent, right? But I think that you do get the benefit of the doubt, right? In terms of maybe the changing in the guard, and now it might be mental, because it's one thing to beat somebody once, but in college football, you beat them twice, especially when they've had your number, Ralph, for so many years and so long. So that was one thing that stuck out to me. I think that you could actually interchange them depending on how you personally feel and what you're evaluating. But I think due to the recency bias of Michigan beating them 2 times in a row, that Michigan actually was ahead of Ohio State. And I think in years past, it might have been different. I believe it actually would have been different at Ohio State. So that was really my only kind of qualm, hey, how you want to look at it. Saw Texas wasn't in the top 10 because they haven't won anything since we were in high school, essentially. Right. Think about that. Vince Young, I was in high school, bro. Man. So, and they're not winning Big 12 championships. I think this year they have the coaching, they have the talent to do it. But I think everyone's on well, you let me down all these other years, so let's wait and see. So, I get it. So those are really the only 2 ones where I'm all right, maybe you put Texas at 10, but they put them at 11. So it's how mad could you be? But I'm kind of curious to see what's your thoughts, because I know your squad is in the top 3.
I think the one thing that when we look at these lists,
mm-hmm.
I don't remember if it's like that with college basketball, but I know with college football, your ranking when you ended last season is taken into consideration with the preseason ranking.
Yeah, college basketball is all the time.
Okay, cool. I wasn't sure. I knew college football was. So this AP ranking is also based on how people finished last year. So I'm curious with a Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, with them being so high on the list, and all of them have quarterback issues.
Yep.
And so Michigan, I'm not surprised with Michigan because Michigan is returning their quarterback.
Okay.
At least 8 starters on defense. I think they're returning 20 starters or something like that on both sides of the ball and special teams. So I'm just I'm not really surprised given the fact that they beat us, and then we still made it to the playoff. So not to keep it so top heavy, but I think that I'm excited to see LSU moved up 11 from last year, and USC came up some spots as well. So with Caleb Williams, I think Texas is going to be one of those ones where We're gonna pay attention to them because of what was it? Ewers,
Yeah,
the
I think.
the quarterback.
Yeah, the quarterback. Yeah,
With him being going into last year, we really didn't have much kind of hopes for him. And now I've been seeing his ranking as far as quarterback going into next year's draft. Drake May and the North Carolina boys at 21.
Drake May. Tulane was there. Wasn't Tulane made it too?
Tulane
Yeah,
made the top 25.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
just going throughout the season, I'm curious to see like will Colorado be able to work their way
Mm-hmm.
into this list?
Yeah, because last season, I mean, one thing we were talking about is you can't get any worse than that what you were before Dion got there, right?
Right, right.
But they're gonna bring Dion in, like, man, you better turn us into a 12-1 team, man. Like
Exactly.
in the first season.
Exactly. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of curious how the season's gonna go.
Right.
I'm looking forward to it. I think the first week of September is when we get college football to start.
Yeah.
And so next up, got another Do You Agree?
Do you agree?
James Harden calls out Daryl Morey at a basketball camp in Japan. I believe it's Japan. Calling him a liar. Now to give you all some backstory, when he opted in,
okay,
and decided to, he technically took a pay cut given the market and the way that things are going. So he took a pay cut. They said that we would either give you more money in the long run, or they would trade him. And then at the beginning of the summer, we were told he would be traded, and then now they're not trading him. So there are some things that, given their previous relationship, I think that that's kind of where this lash out is coming from. Is we had a previous working relationship, which is why I wanted to come here. Things aren't working out. Let me just go ahead and get up out of here. And Daryl Morey is starting to show his true colors. We've heard some instances, or even Melo, in how things were handled with him being released. Chris Paul being traded to the Thunder, he said, Daryl Morey told me I was not being traded. And then I got traded. So it leads you to the question.
Right.
Do you agree with James Harden, or do you agree with Daryl Morey?
I agree with James Harden for all the reasons that you just listed. His history, right? Daryl Morey has a history of these things. And so I think James Harden was the first one to publicly call him out on a stage, right? He's in another country, like, hey, Daryl Morey is a liar. So I think that from a business perspective, though, I think, like I was telling you before, from a business perspective for the show, Daryl Morey may have some things where he's going to try to justify the market value of James Harden in terms of, I don't believe your market value is high, right? Your production in the playoffs, talk about money, trading, okay, but let's say I trade you to Clippers. Terrence Mann, I don't just want Terrence Mann. Give me Kawhi or something. Like,
Right.
Daryl Morey, because think about it. Daryl Morey's always wanted to go to the extreme for players in terms of what he wants in return.
Right.
Right. So I think from that standpoint, it's kind of crazy. But I believe that James Harden in this particular situation, in terms of calling him like a liar and not keeping his promise, yeah, I can definitely see that. And so that's why I'm more on the player side anyway. Like, that's what I usually say. But I believe in this particular situation, James Harden is actually not really in the wrong for expressing how I feel. I just feel like he's the first one to really say something, Ralph. Like, really say something. So that's all it takes is one.
But
I get the business aspect of it.
I'm kind of going on it because I agree with if someone tells you don't agree to something that you're not going to do. Just don't say you're going to do something you're not going to do. Mm-hmm. But also when it comes to James Harden, it's like, sir, you have too many things going against you for the public eye. The public opinion is gonna. They're probably gonna. This reason why this is even a topic, because if it had been anybody else, it's people are probably most likely there's not even a conversation here But I think when you have his history and Maury's history, and then given the situation, if you don't move him for something, it's gonna look real bad, especially because you got a young Ben Simmons out of here for this person. Then when you get this person, he don't want to be here. Then on top of that, you're not getting back what you want. But you got to realize James Harden is. You could argue
Yeah.
that he's barely a top 20 player.
Agree, especially when we talk about the international influx.
Right.
So,
And so, given on his team, like he's the third option on his team, or he should be. But if he wants to win championships, he's going to have to take that step back. And he's not going to be able to dribble, tween, cross, step back. Like you're not doing that no more. You're coming off the screen, maybe getting the isolation on a big and then step back. But we're not doing all of them dribbles, bro. And it just doesn't help the team. It didn't work out there. We're not doing it now. So whatever team he goes to, if he wants to win championships and not just get bread, going to the Clippers, he's not going to be able to do all that dribbling. And he's going to have to step it up on defense because Ty Lue is just going to demand it.
Right.
And so I think, one, he needs to, regardless of the situation, take a step back, swallow your pride, and realize that you're not that guy no more. You're more in this. You're still top 3 on your team, on a championship team. It's just you've diminished to a certain degree, so it's been proven that you can't be the number 1.
Yeah. His last MVP season, what I would say was, or caliber, he had that kind of sort of he was like a top 10 MVP candidate with KD and Kyrie. And it's like those days are long gone now, right?
Exactly.
It seems like it, right? It's like, man, that was how many, like, you know. So I agree. And also, like, he's 34 in regular life. Once again, that's not old, but 34 injuries, he has some hamstrings and things like that. So I think from that perspective, is like I was saying, I agree, like from the business side of it, like, do I want to pay this dude, right? But I'm also with you where it's like, but he said, you know, but then again, you also have to kind of think about, well, have you done anything that would warrant? Because people switch up in business, because when they say it's a business, right? It's nothing personal, it's a business. Now it sucks, and I think that his feelings got hurt. Yeah. I think that's what happened. I think that's really what happened, bro. His feelings got hurt.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that's part of a lot of the reason why he's lashing out, because I don't think he expected it from him.
Yeah.
And so we got quick hitters, man. We had on KG, I think it's the Ticket and the Truth podcast on Showtime. They were talking about the Suns, and KG said that it's D Book's team, and that everybody else just need to fall in line, including KD.
the way you just said it like that, man. But hey,
that's not what he said. I'm putting my spin on it, y'all.
Okay, I'm saying, like, what?
But he did say it was D Book's team.
Yeah.
And that everything should go through Book. And that and to furthermore his comment, because we have the time for it, is he said that on the teams that he mentioned, it's time for the young guys to pick up the rock and take the mantle and lead the way, because LeBron, KD, they've shown that they can lead a team to the finals. Regardless, KD, that whole conversation, but he still got his team to a finals. They just ran up against the Heatles.
Thank you.
So, is KG tripping?
Actually, I don't believe Kevin. I'm going to say Kevin Durant's not true. Like Kevin Durant believes it too right now. But I don't believe KG's tripping, Ralph. And the reason why I don't believe KG is tripping is because I like how he explained. He talked about, you know, taking off some of the load from those players, especially in the later stage of his career. Yeah, Kevin Durant came back from an Achilles injury and played at a level that we have never seen before. Someone recovering from that injury since Dominique Wilkins. He even played even technically at a higher level. But now we're starting to see Kevin Durant sustain more injuries as his career begins to wane. He can still put the ball in the basket, but he did miss some of those so-called layups. He said a mid-range shot was a layup on a Twitter space, right? And so if you go back and look at the series, Devin Booker and throughout the majority of the playoffs, right, Devin Booker performed at a high elite level offensively for the volume of shots that he took at a high level of efficiency in this era that's all about efficiency, right? His mid-range game. And then also he's taken on the task, and he's actually been doing it for about the last 2 seasons of defending, players and making concerted effort on defense, which I don't think it's talked about enough. Sometimes people don't make all defensive teams and they're still good defenders, right? It's a crowded list. So I think that Devin Booker being at the age, it's like, yo, man, it's time to be the Simba, be the new Lion King. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, KD, I got this. Like kind of like Kobe and Shaq, right? So Kevin Durant, I think he made the game easier for Devin Booker, and I think that's great. And so now it's like, okay, well, take over. And if KD takes sort of the back seat, you still have Bradley Beal who can make up some scoring load if Kevin Durant gets injured. So I don't really personally have an issue with it. And also the last thing before I swing it to you, Devin Booker took over some of the playmaking duties when CP3 was injured in the playoffs. And it's not the first time he did that because CP3 got injured the year that they were trying to meet the Bucks again in a potential finals rematch that didn't wind up happening. He took over point guard duties as well there. So I don't really have an issue with it. I think the AD thing was pretty interesting because AD's like a year younger than me. So I'm like, well, AD's not like 26 or 25, man. But I get what he was saying.
Yeah.
And LeBron is different because LeBron's played like how many minutes, bro? Like facing Jason Momoa in commercials about Father Time. So, yeah. So what do you think, man?
KG, man, I don't think he's tripping. I think that to make it short, I think that what he's saying is at some point we can't just keep expecting LeBron to be Cleveland LeBron and carry the team and KD to do the same. It's at some point these players that are getting these max contracts got to step it up and carry the load. And I think that that's ultimately what he's talking about here. I don't think he's making any slights saying that, LeBron is diminishing or KD is diminishing. It's just a matter of at the age that they are, they shouldn't have to do everything.
See, that's hate to some people.
Exactly. So Anthony Joshua over the weekend got a knockout over Helenius, called out Deontay Wilder. We've been talking about this fight for a couple years now. Short swing to the point. Is this a mega fight?
This is the only fight. There we go. It's the only fight. That's like the only fight.
That division, yes, I do believe so. Like,
yeah. So I guess based off that, sure. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like this could have happened earlier, but
right.
It is what it is.
Yeah, I think it should have happened earlier. Before we saw those Tyson Fury Wilder fights, we were talking about this fight. Mm-hmm. And so now that the dust has settled, I think Anthony Joshua's coming off 2 losses now since that conversation had happened. He lost to Ruiz, and I forgot he lost to someone else too, but he came back and won the second time around. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested. I think it is a mega fight. I think this is a fight that I definitely would like to see. I think it's time to go back to the way the question was originally handled. It is time for this fight to happen. And I think it is going to be a big fight. It is a fight that I would spend my money on, as long as they ain't too crazy. Because that $80 for the Spence fight, I was like, whoo, I don't know if I want to spend this $80.
Man, whoo, I feel you on that, man.
And so
PlayStation games going for 80, man.
Yeah. And so we got Aces got smacked last night by the New York Liberty. They're going to play again tomorrow night. These are the 2 top teams in the WNBA. We talked about it going into the season. So now we're wrapping up the season. How confident and what percentage do you give for an Aces Liberty final?
Well, unless Asia Wilson, knock on wood. Actually, I don't even want to say that because I was going to say something about like injuries and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, nope, I don't put that in the atmosphere. Right? Like, nope, man. If you want to come back to this episode, but 80%. There we go. I had to leave room. You know what I'm saying? What do you say?
I'd probably go 80% too, man. Like I just think that the way I've seen them play, the only team in the West that they struggled with was Dallas, and I think that's just because what was it, Erica Agumale? She's a hooper, bro. Like she's averaging like 28 points a game. And I think when you have someone like that can just go off, like we saw last night, where Sabrina's just shooting it from Bora Bora, and it's like, oh, it's a wrap at that point, bro. Like she hit them 3 back to back, and then the one where she was falling, it was just like, yeah, bro, it's cool. Fuck this one up as a loss. Come back stronger on Thursday, and so that's why I think that I'm really confident. I ain't gonna come out and say 100%, but I'll stick with your 80. I might go as high as 85.
Okay, yeah, I like it. I just leave room for like weird miscellaneous events.
Exactly. And so Alicia Baumgartner was she tested positive for steroids going into her fight on July 15th. On the 12th, I believe it said the 12th, she took a test and tested positive, and then on the 16th and 17th, I believe, she had tested negative, it came back clean. Is this a big deal or is it whatever to you?
Well, for me, it's whatever because I'm still going to root for it regardless. So
right.
So what is it that Aaliyah song? It's whatever. But for everyone else, it's a big deal because they're trying to assassinate her name, degrade her legacy, all that kind of stuff. You know how people go when it comes to these types of things. And it's always interesting when this type of stuff comes up initially as positive, right?
Right.
Because athletes will be like, I didn't know, was in my system, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, well, some got in there, how it goes. So people are going to have speculation, especially, when it comes to boxing. She's been performing really well, Ralph, like really, really well.
Right.
I got to see her last fight. So, other than that, for me, but personally, it's whatever. For me personally, it's whatever. So, I'm just hoping that she gets through with it.
I do think it's a big deal because it's the most popular person in your sport outside of Clarissa Shields.
Yep.
And so when you have someone like that's like LeBron testing positive for like steroids, like And then, but the one thing that brings the question is the 2 tests she took the day after and 2 days after that was clean.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that's where the whatever could possibly sneak in. But I think it's a big deal, and I'm curious to see what happens next. With the last little bit of time we got left, I'm gonna get a quick question. Do you agree with Anthony Richardson being the starter week 1?
Who's the backup?
Gardner Minshew.
No, I don't agree. The only reason why, real quick, is I saw some things I didn't like.
Yeah.
He's relying too much on that arm strength right now.
I think that
let him grow.
I think given he only started 13 games.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that stuff, I think when he got out there, he didn't look, yes, he's relying too much on physical talent, but it wasn't like he got out there and looked scared.
That's true.
Or looked out of place, which is something for me that I wanted to see because sometimes you get out there and you look scared and now you're just reacting off of physical, where it's more so not having the experience that some other quarterbacks would have. But I think there's other things given the coaching that can help him. And I think him starting week 1 gets that ball rolling, and hopefully they can sure up some talent when it comes to the people around him. And thank you all for watching. We got the ticker on the bottom of the screen. Make sure you go and follow on TikTok, Twitch, Instagram at KYNGRALPH. at an underscore for Twitter. Make sure you go on YouTube, J.U.K. Media, Facebook, the He Say She Say channel,